The U.S. military says it is successfully enforcing a naval blockade on Iran. A post on X by the U.S. Central Command says U.S. forces have completely halted economic trade going into and out of Iran by sea. The statement by Centcom's commander, Brad Cooper, said that a blockade of Iran's ports has been fully implemented as U.S. forces maintain maritime superiority in the Middle East. The U.S. blockade comes after Iran effectively shut down shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial global waterway for oil and gas transport. Iran shut the waterway during a month-long war against the U.S. and Israel that sent oil and gas prices soaring and disrupted the global economy. Some 5,000 people have been killed. But there is also economic, diplomatic activity taking place despite the tensions. Pakistan, which hosted unsuccessful peace negotiations last weekend between the U.S. and Iran, has proposed a second round of talks. Donald Trump says those talks could happen in the coming days. Here's the U.S. president answering a journalist's question on the Fox Business Network's Mornings with Maria.
Is this war over?
I think it's close to over, yeah. I mean, I view it as very close to over. You know what? If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country. And we're not finished. We'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal very badly.
Let's bring in Ralph Thiele here. He was a colonel in the German army and now heads the security think tank EuroDefense Germany. He joins us from Andernach. Ralph, the U.S. military says it has maritime superiority in the Gulf. What do you make of that choice of words? Is superiority the same as full control?
No, not really. It's a military term. I think it's adequate. What it says is that you, in certain rooms or at a certain time, have more or less a say in this area that you talk about. There is a higher term, which is supremacy, which means, in principle, the other has nothing to say at all. So while choosing superiority, it means this is not full control.
Now, President Trump says the war is very close to being over. How do you see it?
I don't see it. I hope we come to this point, actually. Well, we know from President Trump that he has all kinds of statements that follow his own positions, his terms, his aspirations, but not necessarily the reality on the ground. So we have to see what comes here. My sensing, actually, of this conflict is that in these days, Iran has more choices, more potential for escalation than the U.S. have. This is somehow weird.
What do you make of the U.S. blockading Iranian ports, if you're talking about escalation? Is this a clever move? What risks do you see in this?
Well, at the moment, it may be just a move to have a card at the next talks that come up so that you have something to bargain. In principle, on objective terms, what it does, it takes the income away from Iran that it still has considerably. It makes much more income by oil and gas these days than it did before the war started. Particularly, China is a customer on this point at a problem. China is a very tough player when it comes to its own interests. So at the moment, it's kind of interested to keep peace with the US, make friendly moves, help support it in getting forward with the talks, but it could be a very ugly opponent. So let's hope this doesn't come about.
So that's one aspect that we need to keep an eye on, China's role if the U.S. starts blocking its ships from getting oil that it so badly needs. Well, but looking at Iran, in retaliation for the blockade, Iran is threatening to strike ports of various Gulf countries that are really important to the United States. What would Iran gain, though, from that?
Well, it first would have to hit it. Actually, I'm really thrilled by the performance, for example, of the United Arab Emirates, how well they do. Nobody would have expected that they do so well. So they're in a much better position to protect their ports than Iran actually is to attack them. So it's a threat. It's a threat to prosperity of the Arab nations. It's a threat to their, well, what shall I say, their governance, their ability to govern, and of course for the U.S. To perform from there. But in principle, I think to the U.S. the harbors in the Mediterranean are strategically much more important than the harbors now here. So from there, I think the real threat comes from the U.S. blocking Iran ship movements or Iran-related ship movements. I'm not so scared, actually, about Iran attacks on Arab harbors.
And presumably when you said that the UAE is doing so well, you mean by intercepting or shooting down those missiles and drones coming at them. So where does this blockade leave navigation through the Strait of Hormuz? Can companies who move their goods through, who want to move their goods through that strait, can they resume shipping safely?
Not at this point. So some ships are getting through. It's a lower number, I would say, in ships that are getting through, but by far not much enough. In fact, of course, this is a threat to the Arab nations because they need all kinds of goods to come there to their harbors and then also to go from there to follow their exports. So from there, I mean, this is a kind of threat, but actually, again, threatening the harbors as such should be difficult. I know the navies, they're in scene. I've visited all of them actually, and they're in a pretty good shape as air defense is. So from there, I'm not really too concerned looking at this point. So we are a little, we have a, what should I say, a little stormy weather in a water glass of water that's coming up and may be gone again when the next talks start.
The U.S. started this war together with Israel with various goals in mind, including regime change. That one is looking unlikely at the moment. But what about the goals of destroying Iran's missile capabilities, stopping it from developing nuclear weapons? Are those still realistic goals?
Not 400%. So it appears to me that not all of the Uran will be gone. In the end, all of these enriched uran capabilities that Iran has, they will insist on using it for peaceful means, so we will kind of see of that. But it will become difficult. So part success. The other thing is, in fact, ballistic missiles, and although there are ramps from which they are shot, I think the U.S. and Israeli combined force has, deleted quite or destroyed quite a big percentage of that, maybe 80%, maybe 90%. So that means at least Iran would need some years again to come up in the previous situation it has been. So the threat of Iran will be lower militarily for some time, but lower doesn't mean it's not there. So we can see that right now with this asymmetric warfare that we witness.
Ralph, thank you very much for speaking with us today. That was Ralph Thiele, president of the think tank EuroDefense Germany.
Has been a pleasure.
Well, for more, I'm joined now by Todd Huntley from Washington, D.C. He's director of Georgetown University Law Center's National Security Law Program. He's also a retired Navy captain and judge advocate general. Mr. Huntley, it's good to have you with us. I'd like to use your legal eyes for a moment. The U.S. blockading Iranian ports, if the goal here is to cut off Iran from any and all naval imports, does it become an illegal blockade?
A naval blockade during an armed conflict is a lawful method of naval warfare, provided certain conditions are met. That is, it has to be announced. It has to be impartial. That is, it can't be applied only to ships from certain countries. And it has to be effective. That is, it has to actually be able to stop maritime traffic going into and out of the targeted country. It also has to allow access to neutral ports. So President Trump's initial Truth Social post on Sunday declaring that all maritime traffic would be blockaded would have violated the law of naval warfare. But the follow-up announcements by U.S. Central Command that were then repeated on the White House social media page would make it lawful.
You have been quoted as saying that the Department of Defense Law of War manual states that neutral vessels carrying relief supplies should be allowed to pass. Let me ask you, is this the Trump administration, is this an administration that consults manuals, or will this come down to the top brass in the Navy deciding whether or not to follow through with the plan?
Yeah, no, the president certainly doesn't consult manuals. And I think what that does is often leaves the military in an uncomfortable situation of trying to clean up, and divine what the intentions of the commander in chief truly are. And I think that's what happened in this instance, right? Where with the president's initial post and the follow-up post by U.S. Central Command. So while I don't think the president would consult it, I do think the lawyers advising the commanders, both at U.S. Central Command and on the ground, would be consulting it and advising consistent with it.
All right, let me consult your naval eyes now. The Strait of Hormuz, we know it's a relatively small geographic area to police and control, but the amount of traffic that goes through this waterway is huge. What level of difficulty are we talking about for the U.S. military?
No, I think this is going to be very difficult, and if conducted for any extended period of time, is really going to tax U.S. naval resources. Right now, I think it's manageable because, again, it looks like so few vessels are trying to go through. But I would be concerned if, a large number of vessels coordinated outbound traffic while also spoofing their identification and location signals. I think that would make it very difficult.
I'm sure you're aware that 2 Avenger-class minesweepers from Japan are being rushed to the Gulf as we speak. And as we understand it, their mission will be to clear the Strait of Hormuz of Iranian mines. I also understand that the United States had 2 minesweepers based in the Gulf, which were withdrawn from the area on the eve of the start of this war. Confidence building for a layman does not look anything like this. You were once a Navy captain. How do you read this?
No, I mean, I think this is an example of why allies and partners are so important. Because, naval doctrine and naval planning have been based on the assumption that our partners, who have focused more on mine clearing capabilities and operations, would be operating alongside the U.S. Navy in any type of conflict, and that we could rely on their capabilities in clearing mines. And so I think that's, what it's good that Japan is now, pushing that capability forward to assist us. But I think it does call into question the president's, hesitance to actually rely on partners.
If you had the ear of the U.S. president tonight, what would you tell him needs to happen immediately for this blockade to be successful and short?
I think 2 things. One, the president has to figure out what the end state is going to be. What is the overall goal? And then how does the blockade help achieve that? And what other operations or what other actions need to support the blockade, or what other actions does the blockade need to support? By itself, it's not going to be, leading to victory.
Okay. Retired Naval Captain Todd Huntley. Mr. Huntley, good having you on the program. Good getting your expertise as well. Thank you.
Thank you.